On a cold December morning in 2011, in the city of Concord, North Carolina, a young girl of only 13 years of age ceased to exist for the world. Her name was Erica Parsons, and for almost 2 years, nobody reported her disappearance. Nobody asked about her. It was as if she had never existed. When finally, in July 2013, her adoptive brother decided to speak up, a web of lies began to unravel, revealing one of the most disturbing cases of child abuse and murder in recent United States history. But what really happened to Erica Parsons? And how did her adoptive parents manage to hide her disappearance for so long, continuing to receive government benefits in her name? Before we dive into this shocking case, if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, this is the perfect moment to click the subscription button and activate the notification bell. This way, you won't miss any of our content about criminal cases that defy human comprehension. Erica Lynn Parsons was born on February 24, 1998, the daughter of Carolyn Parsons. Carolyn's life at that moment was in complete chaos. She lived in Concord, North Carolina, and had been married, but became pregnant during an extramarital relationship. When her husband discovered this, he abandoned her, taking with him the 3 children they already had. Suddenly, Carolyn found herself without money, without a home, and without a job, expecting a baby. Carolyn's own childhood had been extremely difficult, marked by instability, periods of homelessness, and abuse by different men in her life. Determined not to repeat this cycle with her daughter, she made the painful decision to look for a family that could offer Erica what she could not. It was then that her brother, Sandy Parsons, and his wife, Casey, offered to adopt the child. In the spring of 2000, after about 18 months navigating the legal system, the couple officially adopted Erica, who was then approximately 2 years old. To the outside world, the Parsons seemed like a normal family. They had other children, including Jamie, who would later become the person to report Erica's disappearance. Casey homeschooled all the children, which, as we would later discover, was a calculated strategy to keep the abuse away from the eyes of teachers and school authorities who might notice the signs and make reports. According to various witnesses, Erica was a sweet child who loved horses. She had slight hearing difficulties, but that didn't prevent her from being a normal and healthy child. However, behind closed doors, the environment in which Erica lived was a true nightmare. While the other Parsons children were treated normally, Erica was systematically subjected to cruel abuse. According to numerous testimonies from relatives and the adoptive siblings themselves, Casey regularly bent and twisted Erica's fingers until they broke. She forced the girl to place her hands over the lit flames of the stove and brutally beat her with belts, leaving marks and bruises all over the child's body. The cruelties were not limited to physical abuse. Casey also subjected Erica to psychological torture and extreme deprivation. The girl was frequently forbidden from eating with the rest of the family. When she did receive food, she was often forced to eat dog or cat food, or to rummage through the trash for leftovers when everyone was sleeping. Erica could not use the bathroom freely. She was forced to ask permission, which was frequently denied. As punishment for minimal infractions, or sometimes without apparent reason, she was confined to a closet or bathroom for hours or even days. If she used the bathroom during confinement, she was beaten as punishment. Jamie Parsons and his adoptive sisters confessed that they tried to hide pieces of food to secretly give to Erica, but if they were discovered, she was severely punished. Casey's maternal grandmother testified that she frequently saw her granddaughter being mistreated in her presence, and that the girl was always dirty and foul-smelling because Casey refused to allow her to bathe regularly. In one of the most shocking episodes, Erica broke her arm during one of the beatings. Instead of taking her to a hospital, Casey sent the children to Walmart to buy first aid supplies and made an improvised splint at home. The result was disastrous. The arm never healed properly, leaving Erica with a permanent deformity. Although Casey was the primary abuser, Sandy was not exempt from guilt. He also participated in the abuse, punching Erica in the head and face with his closed fist, in addition to verbally abusing the girl. But mainly, his silent complicity allowed the abuse to continue for years. The most disturbing aspect of this case is that so many people were aware, at some level, of what was happening. Family members witnessed the mistreatment. The adoptive siblings experienced it daily. In 2002, the Department of Social Services even investigated reports of abuse against Erica, but did not find sufficient evidence to act a tragic failure of the system that should have protected her. Homeschooling, which could have been an enriching experience, was used as a tool for isolation and control. According to testimonies, Casey removed all the children from public school early in their lives, claiming she would educate them at home. However, she didn't teach anything, she simply completed online tests for them. This strategy ensured that Erica remained invisible to the outside world, without contact with teachers, counselors, or other figures who could intervene. In December 2011, something terrible happened in that house. According to Jamie Parsons' testimony, on the morning of December 17th, Erica was confined to the bedroom closet, as frequently happened. Her body was covered with infected wounds, and her skin was taking on a dark, grayish coloration. According to Jamie's description, she looked like a zombie, and her face resembled that of Jesus during his torture and crucifixion. Erica was extremely weak and complained that she couldn't breathe properly. When she told this to Casey, she was ordered to shut up and return to the corner of the closet. That would be the last time Jamie or any of the other siblings would see Erica alive. The next day, December 18th, Jamie reported that, upon waking up, he noticed that his parents had left the house early and only returned later that day. When they returned, Sandy was unusually quiet and seemed disturbed, while Casey acted normally. When Jamie asked where Erica was, they said she had gone to live with her biological grandmother in Asheville. And so began the elaborate lie that would be sustained for almost 2 years, the story that Erica had gone to live with a biological grandmother named Irene Goodman, known as Nan, who supposedly owned a ranch with horses in Asheville, North Carolina. During the months and years that followed, Casey and Sandy maintained this narrative, elaborating on it more and more. Casey told how she had been contacted by Nan through Facebook, that they had exchanged messages for months, and that Erica had also spoken with the supposed grandmother online. According to them, the biological grandmother and Erica formed an especially strong bond due to the girl's love for horses. What made this story even more disturbing was that, even after Erica had supposedly gone to live with Nan, the couple continued to receive government benefits in the girl's name, approximately $600 monthly in adoption assistance, Medicare, and food stamps. They also continued to include her as a dependent on their tax returns. Nobody questioned, nobody asked where Erica was. The girl already lived so isolated that her disappearance went practically unnoticed by the community. There were no school, classmates to notice her absence. Neighbors rarely saw her. And when family members asked about her, the story of the grandmother in Asheville was repeated. An entire system failed to notice that a vulnerable child had simply disappeared. It was only in July 2013, after a fight with his parents that resulted in his expulsion from the house, that Jamie Parsons finally went to the police to report the disappearance of his adoptive sister. Initially, he even went so far as to state that he believed his parents had killed Erica, although he later retracted this specific accusation. When the authorities questioned Sandy and Casey about Erica's whereabouts, they maintained the story that the girl was living with Nan in Asheville. According to them, they initially maintained regular contact by phone and Facebook, but eventually, Erica stopped returning their calls. Casey claimed that Nan's phone number was disconnected, and when she tried to call again, another person answered, saying they didn't know anyone by that name. Detectives quickly began to identify inconsistencies in this narrative. When requested, Casey could not show the messages exchanged with Nan, nor provide any current contact information. Investigators discovered that the real Irene Goodman, Erica's biological grandmother, had died in 2005, 6 years before Erica had supposedly gone to live with her. When confronted with this fact, Casey changed her story, claiming that perhaps she had been deceived by an imposter who was pretending to be Erica's grandmother. She and Sandy continued to insist that they had no knowledge that something bad might have happened to the girl. In one of the most bizarre demonstrations of their attempt to maintain the lie, the couple even participated in Dr. Phil's television program in 2013, where they repeated the same story about Erica having gone to live with her grandmother. During the program, Sandy was subjected to a polygraph test that asked if he had caused Erica's disappearance or if he had a plan to cause her disappearance. He answered no to both questions, but the results indicated strong deception, a numerical value of -9, when just -4 would already be sufficient to indicate lying. Meanwhile, the investigation advanced. Detectives conducted searches of the Parsons house, where they found all of Erica's personal possessions, contradicting the claim that she had voluntarily left to live with her grandmother. According to Casey, they had put Erica's belongings in a bag when they took her to meet Nan at a McDonald's. But the grandmother said she would buy new clothes for the girls, so they brought the items back home. More disturbing still, during the searches, investigators found bloodstains on the walls and floor of the room. DNA analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Erica, Casey, and Sandy, with Erica's being predominant. Additionally, evidence, such as a piece of wallpaper cut and removed, was found, as well as items like a magazine about the JonBenet Ramsey case, the 6-year-old girl found murdered in her home on Christmas Day, 1996, a notorious case that remains unsolved. In July 2014, about a year after the start of the investigation into Erica's disappearance, federal authorities arrested Sandy and Casey Parsons, charging them with 76 counts of fraud, including government benefit fraud, mail fraud, tax fraud, and identity theft. Casey pleaded guilty to all charges and received a sentence of 10 years in prison. Sandy chose to go to trial and was convicted on most of the charges, receiving 8 years in federal prison. During the federal fraud trial, the prosecution presented a pattern of fraudulent behavior that Casey had developed over the years. One case involved a scheme in which Casey offered herself as a surrogate mother, received $10,000 from a desperate couple, and then falsely claimed to have had a miscarriage. When the couple tried to contact her to obtain medical records, Casey changed her number and sent hostile emails to the hopeful parents. Another documented fraud involved activities on the eBay website, where Casey listed items for sale, received payment, but did not ship the products. When her account was banned, she simply created another and continued with the frauds. This evidence helped to establish a pattern of manipulative and deceptive behavior that extended to the adoption and subsequent treatment of Erica. But the real turning point in the case occurred in August 2016. Robin, Sandy, and Casey's daughter and her grandmother, Sandy's sister, had regularly visited Sandy in prison, begging for information about what really happened to Erica. Whether due to guilt, fatigue, or perhaps believing he would be treated with more leniency for not being the primary perpetrator, Sandy finally decided to reveal the truth. He offered a deal to the prosecutors in exchange for a full confession. He would lead them to the location of Erica's body. The proposal was accepted, and Sandy was temporarily released from federal prison under escort. According to Sandy's confession, he woke up on the morning of December 18, 2011, and Casey told him that Erica was dead. When he asked what had happened, Casey claimed that the girl had taken an overdose of sleeping medication, an unlikely story considering the history of abuse. Sandy reported that, in panic, he decided to hide the body while they decided what to do. He described how he wrapped Erica's fragile body in 2 large garbage bags and then placed it inside a large plastic container. Casey went out and bought lime, which they spread over the body to prevent the odor of decomposition. The container remained in the house for an entire day, with the other children passing near it without knowing its macabre contents. After waiting a day, the couple decided to remove the body from the house. Sandy recounted that they made a trip of several hours to a rural property belonging to his family on the border between North Carolina and South Carolina, known as Blair Hendricks Road. There, they buried Erica's body. Sandy then guided investigators to this remote location and indicated exactly where they had buried Erica. Scent dogs confirmed the presence of human remains, and in a short time, investigators began to find evidence. The North Carolina Medical Examiner's Office was called and, after a careful examination, positively identified the remains as those of Erica Parsons. The autopsy revealed the extent of the horror that Erica had suffered: broken nose, broken teeth, multiple fractured ribs on both sides. The broken arm that Jamie had described never healed properly, and the upper left shoulder still showed fractures. Erica was also suffering from serious infections at the time of her death, which corroborated the family's accounts of her sickly appearance in her final days. The medical examiner could not determine the exact cause of Erica's death, but concluded that it was the result of homicide by undetermined violent means. In medico-legal language, this meant that even without being able to specify the specific mechanism of death, there was sufficient evidence to state that it was the result of intentional violence. Confronted with this devastating evidence, Casey finally changed her story, but was still trying to minimize her responsibility. She claimed that, on the night before Erica's death, the girl had talked about suicide and asked for a rope. Casey said she refused, but that Sandy had threatened to get a rope for Erica. According to this new version, Erica would have gone to sleep on the couch where she normally slept, and the next morning Casey would have found her dead, possibly from hanging with a dog collar. She claimed that Sandy took control of the situation after that, organizing the concealment of the body. This narrative, like so many others told by the Parsons, seemed obviously fabricated. All testimonies pointed to Casey as the principal and most brutal aggressor, and the most likely theory was that she had caused Erica's death during an episode of extreme abuse, possibly by strangulation with the mentioned collar, and then involved her husband in covering up the crime. In February 2019, after years in federal prison for fraud, Casey Parsons finally faced justice for Erica's murder. She pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, child abuse, and concealment of a dead body. During her sentencing statement, she made only a brief declaration, saying she was remorseful and apologizing to the family curiously, with the exception of her husband Sandy and her son Jamie, who had exposed her crimes. The judge showed no mercy. Casey was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, with an additional sentence of 20 years for the other crimes to be served after the life sentence. About 6 months later, in December 2019, Sandy Parsons finally faced his own trial for his role in Erica's murder. Due to his extensive cooperation, the prosecution reduced the charge from first-degree murder to second-degree murder. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to serve a minimum of 33 years and a maximum of 45 years in a North Carolina state prison. The case of Erica Parsons is a tragedy on multiple levels. It is the story of a vulnerable child who was adopted not out of love, but apparently as part of a scheme to obtain financial benefits. It is the story of a system that repeatedly failed to protect her, despite clear and persistent signs of abuse. It is the story of a community where many people knew or suspected the cruelty that was occurring, but did not intervene effectively. Perhaps one of the most disconcerting aspects of this case is how many people had knowledge of Erica's abuse without taking decisive measures. Jamie admitted to participating in the abuse until he decided to stop. Casey's grandmother testified to having seen her granddaughter being assaulted in her presence. The Department of Social Services went so far as to investigate complaints in 2002, but did not find sufficient evidence to act. These collective failures allowed the abuse to continue for years, culminating in the murder of an innocent child. A more detailed examination of the Parsons' behavior reveals a disturbing pattern. Casey Parsons demonstrated throughout her life a tendency toward manipulative and fraudulent behaviors. Even before Erica's adoption, she had already been involved in various schemes to obtain illicit financial gains. Sandy, for his part, exhibited a complacency and cowardice that allowed the abuse to continue under his roof. It is important to note that none of the Parsons' other children was subjected to the level of cruelty experienced by Erica. She was singled out as a target, treated in a radically different way from the others. Why? A plausible theory is that Casey saw the adoption primarily as a source of income, the approximately $600 monthly in benefits they received for Erica. The child herself would just be a necessary inconvenience to maintain this flow of money. This theory is reinforced by the couple's behavior after Erica's death. They not only concealed the crime, but continued to collect the benefits for almost 2 years. It also explains why Casey, despite treating Erica with such cruelty, did not give up her legal custody. The girl was worth more to her as a source of income than as a family member. From a psychological point of view, we can try to understand, without ever justifying the abusive behavior through cognitive theory. People like Casey can develop cognitive distortions that allow them to rationalize their cruel actions. They minimize the severity of the abuse and frequently blame the victim, creating a narrative in which their abusive behavior is a deserved response to the supposed transgressions of the child. These distortions function as a psychological shield, protecting the aggressor from the dark reality of their own actions. By maintaining this distorted perspective, Casey could continue the systematic abuse without experiencing the level of guilt or remorse that would normally accompany such acts. In 2011, when Casey and Sandy went to Dr. Phil's program, they publicly demonstrated this cognitive dissociation. They maintained with conviction the story about Nan, presenting themselves as concerned parents, when in reality they had already murdered their adoptive daughter and hidden her body. This type of psychological compartmentalization is characteristic of people with severe patterns of thought distortion. The impact of this case extended far beyond the immediate family. Erica's adoptive siblings will forever carry the psychological scars of having witnessed and in some cases participated in the abuse of their sister. The community of Rowan County was deeply shaken by the revelation that an atrocity of this magnitude occurred in their midst without intervention, and child protection professionals across the country were forced to re-examine their protocols for identifying and responding to signs of abuse. There are painful but necessary lessons to be drawn from this tragedy. The first is about the importance of recognizing and reporting signs of child abuse. Isolated children with inconsistent explanations for injuries or deprived of basic necessities may be suffering in silence. The second is about the need for rigorous monitoring of adopted children or those in substitute homes, especially those with additional vulnerabilities. Another crucial lesson concerns the need to question unexplained disappearances. When a child is suddenly no longer seen, especially without clear documentation of school transfer or relocation, this should trigger immediate alarms. The disappearance and death of Erica Parsons exposed systemic failures at multiple levels in adoption supervision, in monitoring of government benefits, in homeschooling without adequate supervision, and in the community response to signs of abuse. These collective failures created the perfect conditions for a child to suffer years of torture and eventually be murdered without anyone effectively intervening. In response to this case, some jurisdictions in the United States strengthened their policies for supervision of adoptions and homeschooling. Child abuse awareness programs were intensified, and protocols for responding to complaints were revised. These are positive changes, but the real test will be whether they can effectively protect the next Erica Parsons, the next vulnerable child in danger within their own home. Erica's life was marked by immeasurable suffering, but her story does not need to end there. Her legacy can be a renewed awareness of the collective responsibility to protect the most vulnerable children. As a society, we must question unexplained disappearances, be attentive to signs of abuse, and be voices for those who cannot speak for themselves. Somewhere in North Carolina, there is a memorial for Erica Parsons, a silent reminder of a life prematurely interrupted. May her story serve not just as an account of horror and human cruelty, but as a call to action to protect other children who may be suffering silently, invisible to the eyes of the world, just as Erica was for so long. If you like this video and want to support our work of bringing these important cases to light, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share with friends and family. Your comments are also extremely valuable to us. What did you think of this case? Are there other cases you would like us to address? Until the next video.